Welcome to the podcast. I am Dilan De Silva, the podcast on profitable hotels and motels. I'm the author of the book Profitable Hotels and Motels, a street smart formula. And together with me is Owen Eagles. Owen was the narrator of our audiobook, Profitable Hotels and Motels, and he was also the editor of the book. Owen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dylan. It's great to be here.
Thank you for your time. So let me give you a brief about the podcast, which we're going to do, Profitable Hotels and Motels. Introduce yourself to the audience of who you are, what's your background in tourism, and why should they listen to us, both of us talking in this show, Profitable Hotels and Motels.
Well, yeah, thanks, Dylan. Look, my career has been 50 years in tourism. I started in 1966, of all times, as a 17-year-old with Tourism New Zealand, and went through the ranks and eventually got posted to Los Angeles for 5 years. Came back, did Auckland, back to Wellington. Then I came to Brisbane as a travel commissioner, back to Wellington, then back to Brisbane, and I needed a change. So I kind of started a company called ANZCRO, Australia New Zealand Central Reservations Office. And I spent 22 years with that company as the managing director. And there was a wonderful challenge, not easy, but we got there and, we ended up doing, $100 million worth of sales. So
Fantastic.
we kind of got there. And I've since semi-retired. I'm still a director with ANZCRO and enjoying projects such as we're doing today, Dylan.
Fantastic. And I met Owen a few years ago when I was a hotel general manager, and we've kept that relationship. And when I wrote this book, I reached to Owen and asked him to help me create this material because I knew that the value of his experience. So Owen is gladly a co-host of this show, and he's voiced our audiobook. He's got a great voice, as you see. So we're professionals in the industry. I've run hotels most of my life, and I've sold them. Owen has been representing countries in tourism marketing. He's represented travel agencies. So we've got two very similar backgrounds. Owen's more experienced than me, obviously, and I go to Owen for help. And so I believe this will be a good show for motel owners like yourselves who are tuned into this podcast. And in this show, what we're going to do is I'm going to host some platforms, or I'm going to host some discussions. Owen would join me for some discussions. We'll be having question answer sessions. And in addition, we're going to invite people to come to the show, senior hoteliers, senior tourism professionals, to talk and share their experience. So this is going to be actually one of the one and only shows which addresses management in tourism businesses. Owen, what would you have to say about that?
Well, editing the book and doing the audio taught me a little I didn't know. So it's absolutely essential that when you go into the business of accommodation, that you have a good understanding of the highs and the lows of how it works. And it is not a simple business to get into.
Definitely.
It takes a lot of knowledge, it takes a lot of experience. You'll have good times, you'll have bad times, but this book should alleviate any of the big problems you may have and preempt some of the issues which are absolutely critical to the management, the profitable management. That's the key issue to this, the profitable management of accommodation in Australia, New Zealand, and even the rest of the world.
Definitely. And I've seen the book selling a lot of copies in the US, so I believe it's becoming very, very relevant to the rest of the world. So, okay, let me speak a bit of myself, what my background is. Modeling off my elder brother, I joined the hotel industry when I was 17, first as a dishwasher, I would say, while I was attending hotel school. Then I got up the ranks, became a food and beverage director for a large hotel company. I think that time it was a Marriott hotel. Then worked myself up, and I was born in Sri Lanka. I'm a Sri Lankan Portuguese. I've got a Portuguese surname, so I got a bit of background there. And then I moved to my first hotel general manager assignment in Myanmar, or Burma as we call it, in Yangon, where I ran my first 5-star hotel, a 208 room hotel. From there, I then took an assignment as a hotel GM to work in a property in Chiang Mai, Thailand, followed by the Middle East, in Qatar, then again followed to Vietnam, all as hotel GM for, say, various size hotels, large, small, etc. Then I moved to New Zealand about 15 years ago in 2009, I think, 2009-10. Managed a golf resort. That's actually when I first met Owen.
Yep.
And followed by, then I moved to the city, managed some city hotels, apartment hotels, etc., etc. And in 2020, I changed careers. I wanted to do something different, so I moved and became a hotel broker. So in that role, what I did was I sold hotels instead of managing them. And it was a great, I still do that, it's my career still. I still consult to hotels, I still sell tourism businesses, so that's my background.
Did you feel that people were getting their priorities wrong in many cases? The people you saw and met and who were managing or owning accommodation properties?
I'm one big example. So I ran a big 5-star hotel, 400 rooms, massive amount of staff. Then me and my wife, we bought a 15-room motel. Mm-hmm. And I failed terribly because what I was trying to do...
Oh, do tell, Dylan. We love stuff like this.
What I was trying to do is probably, bring the whole 5-star concept into a 14-room motel, which never worked. So in terms of money, that never worked. So I saw a lot of that happening in the industry. And then going back to my point too, which is, people who have been outside the hotel industry coming in, they were good in having their entrepreneurial background. They ran businesses, they run shops. So it was very similar. Running a hotel or a motel was very similar. But they lacked the technical skills, and they were like, spending time in a jail term, or they were doing a jail term or something like that, because there are certain technicalities in a hotel where you need to understand to make money. Most of them did not understand that. So I thought, hey, I've been around this, this game. I've been running big hotels, small hotels. I've run my own business. I've failed in my own business at one point. So I thought I have the perfect credentials to write a book and educate. I thought it's my kind of duty to share what I know with the fellow industry. And I thought when I start doing this, that I can get people like you to support me and share this experience. That's what I thought. And have you seen many books like this in the market?
No, I haven't. No, it's something been missing, I think, in not just the tourist industry, but the hotel and the hospitality industry. And you can never have enough knowledge, and that's critical to understanding. Taking on a new task, i.e., managing or buying a hotel or motel property, or even moving from a large property to a small property, as you did.
Definitely.
To understand the differences and the nuances of each type of property. And they're all different. And they all require slightly different skills, as I understand it.
Definitely, yes. And to answer that question, the skills which is required in running a small to a mid-sized property, and the skills required in running a large-sized property are totally different. In a small to mid-sized property, you're doing a lot of things by yourself. So that means your level of knowledge has to be quite up there. Whereas in a large property, you have department heads. You can afford to have many people. So I think that's the key difference. So those are the two reasons that prompted me to write the book. And I've written one book before this on self-improvement. So I thought, look, I've got the discipline to do it. But then when I sat down and put these contexts together, I think it became a really nice book.
Can I touch on something? You mentioned the word discipline, and having worked with you on the book, it's a key issue. Discipline in terms of process and priorities. And this is something that you talk about in the book, which I felt was incredibly important. The discipline to do the right things, not the wrong things. To do sometimes the hard things rather than the easy things. And those are key issues, as I understand it from your book, in terms of making a profit and an enjoyable lifestyle.
Definitely, Owen. See, one of the things when you're thrown in, say it's your first day, and you bought this little property, you had 25 rooms, you're really excited, and you walk in, and you start taking over,
Yeah.
and you just start ending up in the stars because there's so many processes in a hotel. We all believe like it's running a hotel is like an extension to running a house, but it's totally different. There's so many processes involved, there's so many activities, there's so many background work involved in managing a property. And then you would have felt this on the first day of at your job, it would have everything has been thrown in at you. So I thought if I can organize that information into a pattern, which is the reason for a book. In a book, you get a message in a format so that it's digestible. I thought that's the best way of doing it, and that's the reason. I mean, that's a discipline I thought I had when I took over, because I've taken over many hotels. I had a bit of a pattern of how I look at things. What do I take over first? Then what do I look at? And what's the third thing? What's the fourth thing? So that's what's in this book, I would say. That's the discipline. And you obviously need a bit of discipline to write something, so that's definitely helpful.
Can I talk to you about the profit side of running, accommodation properties? And I know they're all different. It's hard to talk about them in a general term, but perhaps you can talk about some of the secrets about making a profit in the accommodation industry. Key issues, because I think that's what people want to know. How do I make a profit? What kind of disciplines do I need to employ? Is this a 24-hour a day job, 7 days a week? Am I going to have time to be with my family? All these questions that someone's going to ask, either before they're in the industry or when they go in not expecting, what they get.
Definitely, I think one of the things which I wanted to make clear in the book is about what you're getting into. I think that was one of the things which I wanted to address, because you can really see a property by its history. It's another subject. It's a long subject where we probably will discuss throughout this podcast. We'll have another little session about what to look for when buying a property.
Right.
I think making profits in a property is there is no one formula. There is several formulas that work in integration with one another. And I cover a subject called the 4 pillars of an accommodation business. That's probably what I'm addressing there. So Owen, I probably won't answer that question in the introduction, but I think we would carry on. It's a very good point.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear your podcast
Definitely,
on the 4 pillars of success, and it's very well explained in your book. But I think if we elaborate on it in the podcast, it'd be
definitely
wonderful.
So yeah, I think that's the reason I got this topic, 4 pillars. I think the short answer to your question is, hey, if you can find the balance, if you can search for the right 4 pillars, and if you can run a business with those 4 pillars correctly, that's how you make profits in a tourism
and
accommodation.
employing discipline with those 4 pillars.
That's correct, because it's an overwhelming job which you're kind of walking into, or if you're already in a job, or in the first few days it would have been overwhelming. So one of the things which we are trying to achieve in this book is put a system to the management process of a tourism accommodation business. So I believe, if I may interrupt, these questions kind of gave you an answer of what we are going to discuss about in this podcast. So we're going to cover topics such as profit and loss, what you need to choose when you're buying a business. We're going to talk to experts and ask them, hey, what are the housekeeping systems you use to manage your property, and how can a business like yours make use of it? We're going to talk about mistakes people made in running properties. So for an example, I have several mistakes by not having the right market mix, or not having the right clientele in my property, where it costed me so much. So those are topics that we're going to talk about in this podcast.
And we'll talk about software that's needed to run a property efficiently as well.
Definitely a very good point, because especially if you're coming out of the industry, one of the challenges is that you believe in what we call static room rates. Now, I would say static room rates are of the dinosaur age, because you really can't run or yield or revenue manage a tourism accommodation business using static rates. You need to have what we call dynamic rates, rates that move with demand. In your property, there's one basic principle you've got to understand. That is the principle of supply and demand. So if you keep static rates and you don't play with supply and demand, that's why you feel sometimes you're in a jail term, that you're doing all this work and that you're not making money. One key factor to understand in a tourism accommodation business, or one key principle you need to follow, is that you need to make hay while the sun shines. And the sun's not going to shine every day.
So, just talking about dynamic rates, which is I found really interesting when I was working full time with Ansco. The airlines use dynamic rates.
Yes.
It means that you can look at an airfare today, and the same journey will change tomorrow, depending on the load factors, the pricing, the expectation of bookings forward, bookings behind, all that sort of stuff. So there's quite a few factors that come into this dynamic pricing issue, aren't there?
Definitely. And I mean, you took the best example about airlines. Who invented suite rooms first? Airlines.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've been, as a hotel generation, or hotel motel accommodation business generation, we've been copying airlines for such a long time. They're the ones who started business class or first class, and then we followed it with suite rooms. So hey, here's another example. Dynamic rates are such an important thing. And going back to the question, we're going to talk about things like CMS, PMS, RMS. This is all jargon, but you need them. And if you're a fresher, if you're a newcomer to this industry, or even if you worked in the food and beverage department, but you're moving into front office, you need to understand these systems because they're highly specialized. So I have tried to keep it as simple as possible and explain about channel management systems, and we will have discussions. I will explain my understanding about channel management systems going forward in this podcast, and we will also get some revenue managers to this platform to share their experience, because they deal with stuff like this every day.
Yeah, it's often said that the most important person in managing and running a hotel is the revenue manager, the guy that manages the systems that work with dynamic pricing and dynamic management. That person is more important than the general manager, because he is controlling the flow of money.
As a general manager, I don't want to hear that, but yeah, that's
true.
It's true. When I started my career 30 years ago, there was no role as revenue manager. It was a little more old school. It was manual. But so in the last two properties I managed in the last 8 years as a hotel GM, the revenue director, it's not a manager anymore. Director is a very important role, because it makes so much sense, because what revenue management does is, from the same cost level you get more income or more revenue. What's wrong with that? If your cost is 100 and you're selling a room at 200, what if your room can be sold at 250 at the same $100 cost? Then you're making extra money, right? So this is why this podcast is important for you if you're a hotel motel operator, and if you're trying to learn about RMS, PMS, revenue management, channel management, GDS, all those are long topics, and we will cover them in this podcast. So let me share some of the objectives of this podcast. I believe we're going to have a few sessions. I've not counted the exact number of sessions. We might get really excited, but we'll call it season 1, so that we can cover some topics. At times we might take a break and then come back with a season 2. But I believe at least season 1 would have 15, 20 episodes, because there are many people who are lined up to join us in terms of interviews, and some of them are hotel general managers, senior general managers, some of them are business owners of several motels, some of them are like Owen, travel agents, looking to book properties. Some of them are financial controllers of tourism businesses who would want to share their insights about tourism businesses. Some of the people who are going to come on the show are revenue managers who would share tips. If you're running a city hotel, hey, what are the things you need to do? Some of them would be motel operators. Some of them would be camper and park operators. So there's a combination of really interesting talent coming and sharing their experience on the show. So some of the objectives are, we want to share hands-on management knowledge. This is about being a senior manager and what you need to understand as a senior manager. So if you listen to this podcast as an owner, investor, or manager, it's an ideal podcast for you. We're going to share hands-on operational management. So it will be ideal for department heads of hotels. It will be ideal if you're fresh into the hotel business, or even if you've been in the hotel business. Operations knowledge is very important. So this will help you refresh your knowledge. Also, one very important thing in this podcast is that we would share real-time experiences for the purpose of learning. So that is, I'll share my examples, Owen will share his, the people who come on the show will share theirs, and I get comments and reviews. I do consultation to a lot of tourism businesses, so I can share some of the examples. So it'll be hands-on. The practical examples we share would be helpful in quickly implementing it to your business. And I've even got a review very similar to that from a guy who read or listened to the audiobook, and I'll share that at the end of the show. So it's going to be hands-on, because when we share hands-on knowledge or hands-on experience, it's easy for you to implement the science, and the experiment has been done already. And the other thing is, we're going to share tips and tricks, little hacks of how we've done things. It might be suitable for your property, it could be different to your property, etc. And in summary, this book is about being street smart, or this podcast is about being street smart. It's not a textbook podcast, I would say. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about entrepreneurship in relationship to tourism, accommodation, businesses. So I would say, Owen, those are the objectives of this podcast.
Absolutely. Yes, Dylan. I really enjoyed the exercise of working with you on the book through editing and auditing, so to speak, auditoring.
Yep.
And I got to say that, if you want someone who's been there, done that, then Dylan's your man. And let's face it, advice of the sort is absolutely invaluable if you want to make a success of your tourism accommodation business. This is just the best advice you're going to get from anyone, anywhere. Take it from me.
So this is the introduction. I hope we were able to give you a understanding of what you're getting into in the next 15-20 chapters of this podcast called Profitable Hotels and Motels. I'm really excited to share my experience. I'm really excited to have people on the show and discuss certain points with them. And we really look forward to educating you and taking this journey together, so that we can share our knowledge and experience. And I'm sure as we move along, you'll have some comments, which we'll find a platform where you can share them, and we can share them in this show to help fellow tourism accommodation business operators like you and me.
Yeah, great, Dylan. This has got to be a great podcast series, and I'm looking forward to be part of it.
Thank you.
The next, however long it takes.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, and welcome to Profitable Hotels and Motels. We'll see you in episode 2 of Profitable Hotels and Motels. This is Dilan De Silva and
Owen Eagles
signing off. Bye for now.
Bye.